Hi, everybody. You can get it started here. It's like now. Okay. One more this. Okay. On behalf of the Dismantling Racism Planning Team, I welcome you all to our series on racial justice bending the arc. For the next 4 weeks, we're going to be looking at issues related to racism and how we can help bend the social justice arc. As Martin Luther King Jr. said, it bends towards justice, so we're going to help it bend. Today, we're going to hear from 4 women about how racism has impacted their lives and people that they know. And then next week, we're going to look at scripture and what the Bible has to say about some of these things. The following week, the history of the Christian church and the Presbyterian church. And the 4th week, we're going to discuss how we can help dismantle racism in our community and maybe even in our church, if we have some really things in our church. But before we begin with our panelists, yeah, we're already there from our panelists.
Spring the term.
Yeah, okay. There. Okay, but before we begin with our panelists, I want to introduce someone by video someone that several of us have worked with. She's Pastor Becky's Reverend Dr. Amantha Barbie, and she's helped us conduct this series. Set up this series, and you'll be seeing her in each of the succeeding series. So I'm going to play an intro of her now. And then I have another video of something she wanted to that I think we need to hear.
Hello, First Pres. I'm Reverend Dr. Amantha Barbie, and I am so excited about working with you. I thought I'd let you know a little bit about me before we get our work started. I'm the senior pastor at Quail Hollow Presbyterian Church in Charlotte, North Carolina, and I do a lot of work with the Presbyterian Church USA, seminaries, other churches, and companies as well regarding diversity, equity, and inclusion. I'm also a trained life coach. All of that means is I've been taught to listen. And there have been multiple things that I have gleaned over the years, life lessons that I share with others. I feel that it is my responsibility to sit at tables, to have the tough discussions so that we may grow together as a people of God. I've worked with the General Assembly, with the Committee on Ecumenical and Interfaith Relations. I've worked for the Presbytery of Charlotte, advisory to the Presbytery of Atlanta, and done multiple trainings all over the place. And I am looking forward to working with you. Together, we will take one step closer to who and what God is calling us as disciples of Christ. Together, in love and in light. I look forward to seeing you soon. Take care and have a very happy new year.
And like I said, several of us have worked with her, and she is a really great leader. She's also, she's going to be listening to, we're going to do the videos, of course, we're recording, and she'll be listening to those, and she'll be coming in with another video at the end where she asks us some questions about our work and what we're doing. So she also did a video that was really designed to be the first video for next week, which I'll play again next week. But I thought the message in it was so important that we need to hear it now before we get started with anything. I'll play that one more short video.
Hello, Reverend Dr. Amantha Barbie here, and I am so excited to be sharing with you and learning and growing with you as you go through this amazing journey about racism and how and what our responses are as Christians. You'll learn that I ask a lot of questions. And I implore you to ask some questions too. Ask questions of yourselves, your worshiping community, your family. What do the scriptures say about racism and the treatment of our fellow sibling? Where do we find this? And how will we be bold enough to do what it takes to really flip some of these texts on their heads to get into a deeper and truer meaning of who and what God is calling us to be? We have to be honest about what influences our views on racial justice, our social location, what we have and have not been exposed to. That's a very key part of understanding where we'll go. The next thing we must understand is have an accurate understanding of the past and current racial realities. So very often we like to believe that so much is behind us. Well, I'm afraid to tell you that's just not true. We have to understand where we've been and where we are, so we'll have a clear understanding of where we're going. This is paramount. What issues just make the hair on the backs of our necks stand up? What is it? The better question is why. When you hear certain things and something inside is triggered, why? What's the meaning behind that trigger? It's about being honest. It's about being honest in who you are, who we see, who we don't see, our desires for the future, and also the courage to face some difficult roads ahead, some rejection possibly, some hurt feelings possibly. But the most beautiful thing you'll come away with is a deeper understanding of the image of God. And on that, we put our trust. Thanks. I look forward to seeing you soon.
I think those are all words we can take to heart. So you will introduce our fine panel here.
I will. Yes, I love that Reverend Barbie started with that, because when I was talking with all of our panelists and I was doing some reading and some thinking about scripture, one of the scriptures that just popped into my mind was a passage from David. And it was not a good time for David. He had just been with Bathsheba. And when he was remorseful and he was praying and he said, "Create in me a clean heart. Renew a right spirit within me." I think that is what each of us that have been in this class would commit to all of you sitting on our panel. What I'm committing to you. Can't speak for everybody else. The first panelist that we've got is Rosario. So it is. No, you're the Rosario. You are Pat. Let me. I got it. There we go. So Pat's pretty amazing. She is a Santa Fean by birth and many generations, is what I understand. But she is a teacher by passion. When she was young, her parents had every desire for she and her siblings to go to the best schools that they possibly could, because education was important to them. And Pat did that very thing. She actually ended up wanting to go into the business world, but counselors who looked at a woman decided that perhaps it would be better for her to go to a business education. So that is what she did. And what she said, her quote to me was, "I wasn't real happy about that, until the first time I stood in front of a classroom and I was home. And she taught for many years in the Santa Fe schools. Just a few of her accolades include, and she was not comfortable with me saying this, but I asked her, could I please announce her accolades? And she agreed to let me do that. She received the New Mexico Golden Apple Award. She received the Bootstrap Award. She received the Santa Fe Leadership Award. And this one is amazing to me, a Teacher Who Inspires Award. She has some things that she can talk about with some of those awards and what others felt the reason she received them, which I hope that you will, because I think that that's important. Right now, she taught all the way up to the pandemic. She now continues her work in education to try and effectively change some of the systemic problems that are there. Some of those include that she's working to ensure equity for all students. I would think that would be huge, because a lot of teachers would much prefer to teach children that are at a certain level and not all children. So I think that's one of the most critical ones. She supports educational funding, which anybody in Santa Fe knows is desperately needed. She seeks to have curriculum developed by those who teach. That's a concept, right? And then she wants to encourage teachers to accept all students where they are. And her last words to me when we hung up on one of our conversations was, if you're teaching, teaching is not a job. Teaching is a calling, and your heart must be in it. So I look forward to hearing more about her path. The next person is pretty amazing because, and probably like when I started to write down some things, I'm thinking, what do I write down? The second woman is, she is half Tsuki and she is half Apache. And I guess there's no like lineage written down, but her great grandfather is Geronimo. So great grandfather, whichever. I'm thinking if you're descended from Geronimo, you're not taking a lot of prisoners. So it is genetic. It is true. And then one of the most amazing things, so this is, everybody knows I grew up Baptist. So this is Kathy also grew, this is Kathy Lippincott, by the way. She grew up Baptist as well, because when I said, well, where did you go to school, Kathy? And she goes, well, I went to a little school in Texas. And I'm thinking, okay, that could be a lot of schools. And she said, it was in Plainview, Texas. And I'm thinking the only school, as far as I know, in Plainview, Texas, is Wayland Baptist. And like, not even Baptists go to Wayland Baptist. I said, how did you end up doing that? She said, well, we were Baptists. So she went to Wayland Baptist in Plainview, Texas, and she got a degree in elementary education. She has never spent one day in a classroom. Well, I take that back, you have, because you did teach at an adult education at the, let's see, which it was the Navajo Community College. She went from Plainview to Houston, met her husband, Jack, and they lived in Houston for a good long while. They came back here to Santa Fe, started out living on the Tsuki Reservation at that time, which is now the Tsuki Pueblo. And she now lives in the Tsuki Pueblo again. And one story I have to tell is the tutu story. So when your mom promised to give you a tutu. Oh, yeah. So Kathy's mom very much wanted her children to be white because that was very important. As Kathy said, it wasn't cool to be an Indian when she was growing up. And so her mom enrolled her in ballet class, and Kathy wanted a tutu. So her mother said, the only way I'm buying a tutu is if you agree to speak English, because at that time, Kathy spoke nothing but Tewa, and that was her life. She could speak English, she just refused to do it. So Geronimo there. So her mother bought her a tutu, and Kathy started to speak English. By doing that, she lost all of her Tewa, pretty much, and had to have a class later to relearn it. So I think she has a lot of stories to tell you, but they are, I think it's, in talking with her, it was a fun conversation. Let's put it that way. The next person is actually, now we get to Rosario Torres, whose father was a diplomat for the State Department. And Rosario, as a child, grew up in a lot of places. Her father's, it's called the home of record, was El Paso, Texas. So she was in El Paso quite a lot, but she also was in Mexico. She was in Argentina. She was in Cuba. She was in Panama. She's lived here in Santa Fe for the last 50 years.
No,
50, oh, I'm sorry.
in Santa Fe,
In Santa Fe,
12.
about 12, okay.
In the US.
For 50 years. Thank you. I had written that down wrong. So it is very interesting. I think the thing for me that was like quite a comeuppance is that when I sent out a little thing and said, oh, I'd like to know where you're from, what you've done, blah, 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 blah. And when Rosario was the first person I spoke with, and she said, why did you ask that question? And I said, which question? And she said, why does it matter to you where my family is from? And the first thing that came into my mind is because I'm a white woman and everybody wants to know where your people are from. And so Rosario said, wouldn't it be more important to ask me, where am I culturally? And it was like, well, yes, that is more important. And it is especially important in light of the fact, as she moved around, her parents encouraged her, whatever country she was living in, to learn the language, the political culture that was there, and really how the people lived and where their minds were, which I think is what all of us in this class are reaching for, Rosario. That was just huge for me when you said that. Another thing that she said is that she is an American citizen by birth. Her roots, though, are in Mexico. And she has always looked to find what the rich cultural heritage that she could have by her moving around. So I think she currently is, and make sure I've got this right, is that she works with children at the Cesar Chavez School as a volunteer, foster grandparent, helping children with English and math and Spanish. Well, English, math, and
Dual language.
dual languages. So, which is pretty impressive. So we got a lot of educators here. And the last person is very dear to my heart because Juanita has participated in our racism class from the very beginning when we were all on Zoom together. And when I talked with her, she said, I said, how would you introduce yourself? And let me find it because I've got to read it because it's just, I don't want to mess it up. She said, Mary, I've gotten to the point when I introduce myself, this is how I do it. My name is Juanita Thorne Connerty. I'm the daughter of, I can't do this without like crying. I'm the daughter of Julius Thorne and Teresa Thorne, whose great grandparents were slaves in Georgia. So Juanita, who's, I believe I counted it up, 3 generations out of slavery, grew up in a home where she had only a father that was there and 6 children. And when that happened, our great social network jumped in and wanted to take all of Juanita and her siblings away and put them in foster care. And her father said, no, we're not going to do that. I'll do whatever I can to make sure that my children stay together. And that's what he did. So his youngest daughter, who was 2 at the time she almost went into a social network, she now is a wife, a mother, a practicing nurse of over 40 years, and a business owner providing medical management to seniors. That means that she has a degree in counseling, she has a degree, a master's degree in education, and a nursing degree. She, in addition to all of that, she also serves on the board of the Espanola Opera Guild and the board of the Pharmaceutical Association. And she as well serves as a session member here at First Presbyterian Church who set strategy and direction for our church. And the one thing I can personally say about Juanita, she is a force. I know that because I have gotten the look. So we'll go right back to Pat, and Pat, it's your turn. If you want to just, whatever you want to share with us, we are wanting to learn and to listen.
Okay,
Or maybe we'll listen and then learn. Is that maybe that's a better order.
most of it got based on learning, yeah. So, buenos dias. You need to go to the.
Can you stand up here?
Oh, gotcha. Okay, buenos días. Estoy muy agradecida estar aquí hoy con ustedes. Good morning. So I chose to begin and to greet you in the language of my heritage for a few reasons. As I began reflecting, what would I share with you all this morning? I decided to put it around the theme of erasure that comes under the umbrella of what you are exploring in this workshop that you're doing. So let's talk about the language of a people. It's not just nouns, verbs, sentence structures, right? It carries within it the very essence of a people. The history, the culture, the traditions, the values, the wisdom in our dichos. So when you erase that, you're not just erasing sentence structure. You're erasing the essence of a people, of a culture. And that's very important to me. And it's very important for people to quite understand that. So when I hear out in the community, well, speak American, I think, what does that mean, speak American? But okay, all right, people don't understand. So let's talk a little bit more about erasure. How is it done? I don't want to make anything personal to any of you. How is it done? Well, there was a beautiful mural on Guadalupe Street in the old archives building, done by local people. They probably had to raise the money to do that mural to begin with. And it was beautiful. And what do? We just erase it. We just erase it. And how is it done? Money, power. For what reason? To put your name up in gold on a building? Erasure. So I'm an educator. What about in the schools? Let's just erase some things in the schools. Some schools have 100 kids in them. Some have 400 children in them. It's under the guise of inequity. Inequity. It's not even subtle. If we start looking and being aware, it's not a subtle erasure at all. So while, yes, there's pain, I've experienced pain of prejudice, of bias, of racism. I don't want to only talk about that because I think it's a collective pain. There's a collective pain out there. But I will give you 2 examples just so that you know it's very personal to me. When my son was in elementary school, we go to a parent conference and the teacher, I won't mention her name, but her name is very in my memory. She says, Tomas is a little bit belligerent. And I said, okay, well, I don't know him that way, but I'm not a parent that says, oh, not my kid. What's the situation here so we can remedy it? She says, every time I call roll, he corrects me. So his name is Tomas. She says, Thomas. And he says, no, Tomas. And she does not like to be corrected. She is the teacher. So my husband and I are going, well, from our perspective, we don't, consider that disrespectful or belligerent. That's his name. Why is it that you can't? It's not even that hard to pronounce, Tomas, right? Honor him in his birth-given name, his baptismal name, who he is. So I was very proud of Tomas. I mean, for a little kid, his self-esteem must have been pretty good because he wasn't shame-based. But I keep thinking, how many students, how many kids would be destroyed by a teacher doing that to them in front of their peers? So let's fast forward to high school. My daughter's in an accelerated science class. Only 2 Hispanics in that class. What's wrong with that picture? Okay. So as usual, at the beginning of the semester, a teacher does icebreakers. So the icebreaker was, what's your name? What does your mom do? What does your dad do? So when it comes around to my daughter, she says, my name is Andrea. My mother's a teacher and my dad works at the lab. The teacher says, oh, is your dad a janitor? So I'm not degrading any job and anybody that does any job. But what is it? What is the meaning of asking a student that in adolescent high school where peer pressure is notorious to do that to my daughter? She answers, no, my dad is a scientist. He's a chemist, a mathematician, one of the nation's top scientists. Why would somebody assume that? Why would somebody assume? So I think in the denial of the teacher saying that, the other Hispanic student comes to my class next period and said, oh God, Mr. Vela, do you know what happened to Andrea? And he tells me that. I give credit to my daughter because, of course, being the person that I am, I'm going to stand up for rights. And my daughter said, please don't do that, Mother. You're going to make my life miserable if you do that. I get it. I get it. But nonetheless, when she was out of that class, it was time to bring it up because if it's happening to her, what do we want to do? Erase that? And we can erase so many other things. So subtly, but it's deliberate. How else could we do it? It's off the shelf. The books that are told authentically, the true story, the authentic story of a people. And we don't, what is it? We don't like it. We don't understand it. We resent it. We're afraid of it. But hey, let's just erase it all, pull them off the shelves on taxpayers' dollars even. And then I think, oh, now in this community, I grew up here, right? There's controversy with monuments. Let's just hide them in monuments, put them away. Do you erase history by removing an outward symbol? And yet, I drive by Catherine Street many times, running errands. The Santa Fe ring, where's the history told about that? Catherine stole, manipulated, exploited people and gets their name put on the street. Wow. Do we think of those things? And where is the history told? Who is writing the history in the classrooms? I'd like to know who writes New Mexico history. Is it truly told? Is the history of other cultures truly told by the people whose history it is? And so, yes, it's been painful to see that, to hear the stories of my parents, my grandparents, my friends who were once punished, even physically, for speaking a language. If we erase that language, we erase the very essence of the people. And doesn't it say somewhere, to thine own self be true? So growing up here, everybody loves to come to Santa Fe. Of course, it's beautiful. We love it. They love the food. They love the culture. They love the traditions. They like the customs. They like the ceremonies. But they don't love the people whose custom and whose culture it is. So what's wrong with that picture? And then let's erase it even further with gentrification. Our own kids, I was in the classroom and I want my kids to succeed. I want them to come back and contribute to this community. We need their talents. We need their good work ethics. We need their help. I mean, I'm getting older. I know I'm going to need some accelerated help in my years on this earth. We want them here, but let's erase it. They can't afford to live here. They can't afford to live here in the city, in the community that they grew up in, that they got educated in, that their parents and grandparents and great grandparents live in the name of what? We can just erase it. The land in our culture, in my culture, I'll speak, but I think it parallels so many others, is sacred. It's a very sacred thing. It's not a commodity. There's even a song, you know, we ruined paradise to put up a parking lot. I can't remember exactly the song. Yeah, and so
Hey, paradise.
yes, we paid paradise to put up a parking lot. And yet, where that parking lot might just be sacred ground. And a home in my culture isn't a commodity. It's not an investment. It's the sacred space where a family grows together. It's a sacred place that is needed and wanted to be passed on to another generation. It's not a first home, a second home. It's the sacred space of a family, because family is very, very integral in my culture. So I guess I could share so many other stories. I don't know what my time has been, if I exceeded it, but I do know.
We'll expand our series if we need to.
No, okay. I was gonna say, we could write a book, right? I could do the whole week, whatever you're doing. But I just leave you with, to thine own self be true. And it's very difficult to keep that when people are trying to erase it out of you. And somewhere, isn't it said, for what we have done and for what we have failed to do. So, thank you.
Miss Lippincott, you're up.
Oh,
I think you're up to it.
oh, yeah, we know you. We know you well.
We need a stool for you to stand on.
I don't like it. You have to pay me for my picture. I forgot what I was going to say. Well, I'm Catherine B. Hill Lippincott, Catherine Cruz. I am half Chisuki, half Apache, and half Mexican. The Mexican is when my great grandmother was captured from a tree. She was left hanging in her cradle. This is our history. I don't know how true it is, but it makes for a good story. She was captured and by Pancho Villa. One of Pancho Villa's men found her hanging in a tree after rape in Corralitos, Mexico. The man that found her took her, and he didn't have the heart to kill her. Everybody else was dead. He didn't have the heart to kill her. So he put her on his saddle, took her to the town they lived in. We're not sure where it is anymore. Somewhere around El Paso. And it was called Corralitos. So, oh no, my wife already has a hassle with kids. She's not going to take another one. But she'll do it if I baptize this baby. He took her to, well, he didn't know what it was at that point. It was a baby. took it to the church. Dad has a baby. If it's a boy, it's Jose. If it's a girl, it's Josefa. So Josefa lived with a Mexican family. Her mother died. No. She died. Josefa died in childbirth. Okay. So there were 3 daughters, Catherine, Cruz, and Lucy. Catherine was the oldest. Okay, those 3. My great-grandfather must have been Lothario. He was not good. And my grandmother, her great-grandmother, thought, I have these Indian children, granddaughters. What am I going to do with them if something happens to me? And she heard about this Indian school that had just been built in Albuquerque. She thought, oh, I have a letter that she wrote to the War Department. That's what we were under. And the letter says, I have these 3 granddaughters, and because they're Indians, they won't inherit anything from our family. Someone from the War Department came and picked them up in what's now El Paso and took them to the Indian school in a buckboard to Gallup, I guess it was, as far as they went. They got to Gallup, and there were a whole bunch of Navajo children there, and my grandma and her 2 sisters, and it was the first time anybody they brought in all these Navajo children, and they never heard a train whistle. The train whistled, and it scared them, and they scattered. And Grandma said all she remembered was 3 days later, they gathered them all up and they took them to the Indian school. My grandmother never went home again, except one time when Catherine died. Catherine, who I named after. When she died, Grandma always said she died from pneumonia, but she probably died from the flu. Grandma was 10 years old when she was at the Indian school. She left the Indian school. Indians only went to the 8th grade. So she said, no, I'm going to go to Albuquerque High School. She went to Albuquerque High School. There's a wonderful picture of my grandmother. She was the first Indian to graduate from Albuquerque High School. And she walked to Albuquerque High School from the Indian school, and she thought, okay, I'm going to get a teaching certificate. So she got a teaching certification, I think that's what it was called, at the old St. Joe's College. She worked with the nuns, and she said all she remembered was being hungry all the time. After that, she went to Ojo Caliente and taught school there for years and years, met my grandfather, who's a compost. Okay, we get some Spanish now. I am the result of erasure, I guess, because when my parents come, they go to the Indian school. That's where they met. How do Apaches and Taylors get together? Well, they go to the Indian school, right? So both parents were in the service. Mom was in the Navy, Dad was in the Army. He was a pro hauler, and then he was helped it with the bomb. And my mom was in the Navy. She helped my dad. They're going with this. Oh, and then I came. And I grew up at the Puebla, and Suki Puebla, till I was 5. She told us a story about having to speak English. Didn't want to, but I learned because I wanted to teach you more. And grew up in Los Alamos until I was probably however old you are when you're in the 6th grade. 6th grade, I guess, because I went to the Rio Chisuki school for 1 week where I got beat up. Oh my God. So I left. And I commuted with my father to Los Alamos for the next year. Then I went to Lee Harvey Junior High right there. Gone. And I understand this is where my burial ground for my people was, right here at this high school, was the high school when I was there. Okay, then I go to school, go to college, in Pineview, Texas. If the world ever needs an enema, I know where it goes.
So accurate.
And then I had this horror of being an homemade school teacher in Santa, you know. So I went with my girlfriend and well, he wasn't a boyfriend, he was a gay friend. The three of us went to Houston. And we lived there where I met my husband, Jack. Then I married up in this church, by the way, 51 years ago.
I thought he married.
Well, he did. Our wedding was fun. We got married here. Dr. Boshin married us because the minister that I grew up with, who baptized me, who taught me how to be a Baptist, and I am a good Baptist, believe me. Yeah, I can do it. Wouldn't marry us because it had nothing to do with white and Indian. It had to do with liquor. We were having champagne punch. And no champagne punch. He did not marry her. Dr. Boshin agreed to because you're Presbyterian. So we married at this church. All the Indians came to see how the white folks were going to do it. All the white folks came to see how the Indians were going to do it. And believe me, I married into a very white family. I mean, he's got an aunt. The only woman whiter than Aunt Wanda is the Queen Mother. She is a white lady. We had a great time. We've been married 51 years. We have 2 children. The schools, the teacher she was talking about, has since died, thankfully, and miserably. Thankfully. She told us that my son, when he was in her grade, would never learn to read because of the cultural difference at our house. I, who can always come up with something, didn't know what to say. I got home and I looked at Jack and said, Jack, who's talking about, me or you? It was, thankfully, she's there. Yeah. So it's all been very strange. I'm as white as I know how to be. I'm also as Indian as I don't know how to be. I'm learning. My brother died this year, and it was really wonderful. When I asked my dad, why weren't we brought up traditionally? He said, because you needed the choice. And you need the opportunity to have that choice. And as her parents, it was important that we be educated. So I had the choice. And he said, you can always come back. And I'm back now. And it's been a learning experience for all of us, aren't there? And I'm glad to be back. I'm learning about where I came from, and it's been wonderful. And when my brother died, it was glorious. He's fishing now. And at the funeral, a woman came and sang in Taylor. Amazing Grace in Taylor. And it was not planned. She showed up. Baptist. And the governor of the borough came and prayed. And the council helped take his casket because nobody told me we had to have pulpit. I thought that's what we paid for, but anyway.
My-
National Cemetery.
At the National Cemetery, my brother was also there, but my mom and dad are also there. And then my uncle Herman, who's not really an uncle, he's a cousin, but Indian way, he's my uncle. Gave the last service and the last prayer in Kenya, and it was wonderful. That's me.
You're at. Okay, soy Rosario Torres Orcasitas. And I was born in Chihuahua by virtue of the fact that my dad at that time was assigned to the American consulate in Chihuahua City. I could have been born in any Latin American country because my dad was primarily assigned to Latin America at that time. My dad passed when we were in Panama, and after his death, then we came back to Mexico where my mother's family was living. And my mom, like Pat, went to Loreto Academy in El Paso. Well, actually, first in Las Cruces. And when Las Cruces closed, then she finished high school in El Paso. So it's interesting that we have things going on between us. I lived in Houston. That's where I went when I came into the United States on my own. I can't tell you why I chose to go to Houston, but I was somehow moved to go to Houston. So I started my life in the United States on my own in Houston. And the reason why I wanted to come to the United States is because I knew a lot about my mother's family. I knew very little about my dad's family. He died when I was 8 years old. And I felt that in order to find about my dad, find what made him tick, be who he was, why he served in the military. My dad served in World War II, why he joined the Foreign Service. To learn more about him, I wanted to come to the United States and figure out what was life in the United States like. And I also wanted to decide, I had dual citizenship, so do I want to keep my American citizenship, or, you know, I had all kinds of reasons, questions, to try to figure that out. And so I ended up over here and I have stayed here. In Mexico, I grew up with privilege. My mother's family has been a privileged family. I didn't have privilege, the kind that she had. I don't have any money. I don't have anything in the bank, you know, that will hold me over or anything like that. But her family did have money. When I came to the United States, oh surprise, I suddenly had no privilege. And actually, I didn't even know that I had privilege at that point. But here I knew all of a sudden that I was a dumb Mexican. And being a woman, it was even worse. So it was interesting for me to try to figure things pretty much on my own. I mean, I stayed in touch with my family. I called and we wrote, and the relationship with my family has always been there. But I had to figure things out on my own. And this was at a time where everything in the United States was exploding and imploding. The Vietnam War, the women's movement, the Black Panthers. I mean, there was all kinds of activism, all kinds of things happening. So as I was thinking about, well, what am I going to talk about today? How am I going to frame it? I thought, well, fear. Fear is a primary question, thoughts that come to mind. Fear on my part and fear on the people around me, not knowing what's a dirty, crazy Mexican woman doing over here. and how can I show who I truly am and not let their fear and my own fear having to confront all of these realities consume me and evaporate me, so to speak. I have been a fighter my entire life. I grew up surrounded by brothers. I'm the only girl in my family, the middle child. So that should tell you a little bit already about me. I grew up Catholic, and the Catholic Church does a number on girls and women. Subservient, you do as you're told, etc. But I happened to go to a private Catholic school once I came back to Mexico. My first school was in Havana, Cuba, and it was called Columbus School. And it was a school for Americans living in Havana. And actually any kid from the diplomatic corps from any embassy. But when we went back to Chihuahua, I went to a private Catholic school. And I don't know if you're familiar with the Religious of the Sacred Heart. It was founded in France. And that order was founded to really help girls from privilege develop more of a conscience and a desire to help people and the community and not be highfalutin and spoiled little brats. And I'm really grateful that my mom chose to send me to the Religions of the Sacred Heart versus the Incarnate Word. There was a rivalry between us, the both orders or both schools. The Incarnate World nuns were known as being horrible, as being the kind that would be rough with the girls and would hit them with a ruler. That was not the way the nuns in my school were. They were all teachers. They had degrees in education. But there was also a demarcation between the nuns that taught and the nuns that dealt with the duties like cleaning, cooking, all of those things. And as a kid, I would ask the nuns, why do you have a golden cross? And why do the hermanitas have silver crosses? They were different, not only in the size, but the color and what I saw as some sort of code. No, it was a code. And the language that the nuns spoke, all their communiques were in French. Everything that they put outside the chapel in terms of hours and, things that were telling each other were in French. But the hermanitas didn't speak French. They spoke Spanish. So I started asking, what is this about? Why is there a difference? And their habits were a little bit different. Our nuns had a galleta, we call it galleta. I don't know if you remember the boxes of cookies that had this little thing that separated the different kinds of cookies. It looked like that thing that they wore here. Well, the hermanitas didn't have that. It was just flat and plain. So from a very early age, I observed and noticed differences. Our school, which was for the rich girls, had been donated actually by a famous person. And then in the back, there was another school for the poor girls, the girls in the neighborhood where the school had been built. And I always asked, well, how come we never interact with the girls in the back school? And why is that? Well, there was one day a month that we could interact, but they didn't come inside the school. We had a picnic outdoors where we graciously treated them to lunch with us in the outside, on the grass. And so again, that was something that why? And the day that we would do that was on a Friday, that was a Sacred Heart Day. So our school was the school of the Sacred Heart. So from a very, very early age, I have always questioned, observed, seen differences. And the person that I could really talk with about things was my grandfather. My grandfather's family dealt with the revolution, the Panchoilla, and I have all kinds of Panchoilla stories that I can share with you. But the one that was most interesting to me was that my great grandfather made an agreement with Pancho Villa that he could come into the ranch. They owned the biggest, largest ranch in the north, in Chihuahua, that was sheep ranch. And they were told, well, that's the story. I don't know if it's folklore or what, but that's what we heard. They made an agreement that Pancho Villa could come into the ranch, change horses, get fresh horses. The troops would be fed, but he could not touch any of the women that lived in the ranch, where they were family or workers, or, there were other women that would come to the ranch to do chores or grow food or, whatever. And so the story that my grandpa would tell me is that Pancho Villa abided by that. And so our family was never harmed by any of the revolutionary troops. And so I found that kind of also interesting, because in my mind, it's like, okay, so you preserved your privilege, you protected who lives under you, but what happened to the rest of the people outside of, the ranch? So I've always been one that really is not satisfied by just one piece of the puzzle or one story. I've always had to look further, into things. But I know that racism has aspects of privilege weaved into it, and has aspects of fear weaved into it. I truly believe that human beings, no one wants to be a bad person. I don't think anyone wants to really hurt anybody, but somehow fear overcomes us. Fear is taught, so to speak, in folklore, in music, in stories, in myths. And we go with fear rather than with kindness, compassion, and love. And I think our job as humans, and if we are involved in churches and we believe that religion is a way for us to give us a path to becoming better, we really have to let go of fear, and we have to start to recognize that there's only one way, and that truly is the way of love and kindness. And I struggle with it because I'm one, and Elise knows that I can be passionate. And when I'm passionate about things, I am fierce. And I think that's the part of fear that kicks in, because I fear that I won't do what my soul tells me to do. I won't respond to what deep inside of me I know I need to do. But I also know that sometimes in being so fierce, I turn people off. They stop listening to me because I can be in your face. And that's not good. Sometimes we do have to be in someone's face, but not as a general, way of doing things and a general way of doing things. People ask me, where were you born? That question drives me insane. When a person of my own culture asks me where I'm born, it's not an issue of whether I'm legitimate or not. It's an issue of finding out what similarities do we have? Do we eat the same things? Do we like the same music? It's about culture and it's about values. But when someone asks me here, where were you born? It's really about papers. Are you legitimate? Are you here legitimately? Or did you, come here illegitimate? That drives me crazy. Because there is no human being on earth that is illegitimate. And there is no human being that doesn't have a right to be anywhere they choose to be. It also drives me insane that we have to create borders and walls to keep those people out when for eons, human beings anywhere in the world have always migrated. We've always moved around, and we've always moved around for different reasons. To find lost relatives, to find better sources of food, to just be curious and see what's on the other side. I mean, there's so many reasons why we move around. Music, trade. I have feathers. What can you give to me? What can we trade? Rocks. I love rocks. That comes from my grandfather. He was a mining engineer. So if I can go, up the mountain and find me a beautiful looking rock, I'm going to put it in my pocket. It's because I love nature and I love being curious about life. So I went to graduate school at the University of Michigan. My first week there, one of the people, one of the deans, go blue, one of the deans there, my name ends in an O, Rosario. And Rosario is a bunch of beads that you pray with, Catholics pray with. So he tells me that I don't know how to spell my name. My name should be Rosaria.
Pretty sure.
And I looked at him and I said, excuse me. You think that I don't know how to write my name and I have to come to the University of Michigan for you to correct the spelling of my name? That was mind blowing to me. He never understood that he had no right to challenge or to even question the spelling of my name. And if I want to spell it with a W in the end, it's my right to do that. So I have so many stories I could talk to you about, but Pat talked about the mural that was erased. I was one of the people out there that day, well, several days, marching about keeping the mural, preserving the mural. It's not the only mural that have been erased in the city. I was here marching about the statues. I remember the sharpshooters up on the roof. The city had to put up shooters in case those Indians, got out of hand. And this is a burial ground, was a burial ground. And it's not the only place where, we have stepped on, dug up, did whatever we wanted to do without consulting with our Tewa, brothers and sisters. It drives me crazy every time that someone does a land acknowledgement. And don't get me wrong, we should do land acknowledgements. But what do we do after doing a land acknowledgement. How many lands have we given back to our Tewa brothers and sisters? You know, how many times do we honor them? We're getting ready to build Midtown. I'm very involved in Midtown with Pat's son, Tomas. And one of the things that the city continues to say is that that property is going to be the heart, the new heart of the city, because it's geographically more now the center in relation to where, you know, the city has grown. So my question to them, to the city, has been, and how are we going to now honor our pueblos, and in particular our Tewa pueblo? What are we going to do to really acknowledge that this continues to be unceded Tewa land? We continue to destroy it. We continue to do whatever the heck we want with it. And they're over there in their reservation. So we need to move. We need to move. I can tell you more stories, but the point is, look in your heart. And if you have fear regarding why some people are difficult for you to deal with, just figure out what is the fear behind it and try to let go of that and look for the heart of the creator that you know. And a creator cannot be fear-based. The creator is life-giving, so.
So we're out of time. Yeah.
Make time.
We absolutely will make. There isn't one person in here that would like to move.
Maybe a couple, but now they're too embarrassed. Thank you for that. Good morning.
Good morning.
So great to be here. God is good. God is good. And I say that because I was almost not here 2 months ago. I almost died. So I'm happy to be alive and to be here. With that said, I'm Juanita Thorne Connerty, a very proud member of this church. Very, very proud. A very proud Black woman. Very proud to be in this community, to do the work that I do, and to be of service. I'm the daughter of Julius Thorne and Teresa Thorne. And I'm here today with one or two stories, maybe more, about my experience and what I do as a Black woman, as an African-American woman here in New Mexico, and how I survive. And some days it is survival. Yesterday, just yesterday, I was meeting someone for lunch, and I won't tell you that I was a month early. I was supposed to meet them March 4th. Probably early to get a table. A month early. And these 4 white women came in. I gave the waitress, the host, my name and said there will be 3 of us for lunch. 4 white women came in. One brushed past me and said, I want this booth. I'm going to go get that booth, she said to her friends. I looked at them, looked at her. She went past the hostess, right to a waitress who was by the counter and said, we'll take that booth. And I said, excuse me? Excuse me. I was here, I'm standing here, I'm not invisible. Right.
is this white privilege here? And I looked at all of them and they were, I can't say, clutching the pearls. Did you want that booth? I said, as a matter of fact, that's exactly. That's exactly what I wanted. And the hostess backed me up. She said, "Now we're ready to seat you. Will you take that booth?" And I turned them and I said, "I don't think I want that booth after all." Once again, they you have that booth. Came up and she goes, "I'm going to buy you dessert." I said, "I don't eat dessert. I want this to be a teachable moment for you. I'm not invisible. We as a people are not invisible. Do not have this white privilege and brush past me or anyone else ever again." And I sat down and see. That was yesterday. So I've got this long history of raising. I have a beautiful, wonderful black child, daughter, beautiful, wonderful black child, son, that I raised here in New Mexico. My husband and I, we've been together 54 years. I know I look great for 70. And we decided to raise our children here. I have to raise my children differently than you raise your children. When I go to bed at night, I turn out the lights and I pray that my children will get home safe, that they will not be pulled over by a police officer, pulled out of a car, be beaten or killed. That's what I worry about every single day, every single night. It doesn't change. When my children were growing up here, I had to say to them, never, ever, when you go to someone's house with your friends, never be in a room alone. You don't want something to come up missing. The first person they're going to look at is you as a person of color. And they're going to say, where was he? Oh, he was by himself. He did it. She was alone. You think she took it? Oh, probably. Never be alone. Always when you're in a car and you're stopped, hands above, never below. Those are the things I have to teach my child and my children. It's something you don't even have to think of. Another thing you don't have to think of, walking into Dillard's and getting the help you need. Do you need to think about what you're going to wear? Sometimes you're gardening, you go, oh, I need to pick up an outfit. I need to go and get some shoes. You'll just go into the store. I go, what am I going to wear? What do I look like? Is my makeup on? My hair done? Will I get service? There's a big difference. Invisible. I'm invisible to a lot of people. They don't see me. They don't want to see me. I'm ignored. We're ignored because of the color of our skin. She doesn't have enough money. She's not going to buy anything. I'm not going to waste my time. She's going to come in. She's probably looking. She's not going to want to buy enough for me to bother with. These are truths. My truth. Going to Hawaii. Beautiful Hawaii. 2 weeks I had to spend there. I was happier as could be. I go and I go across the street. I'm staying at the Marriott. I can remember as clear as day. It was a glorious day. Sun shining, water sparkling. I sit down and there were 3 women on the bench. I sit down next to a woman. She takes her purse, which is on my side, and moves it over to the other side of her. Thought for a minute. I tried to be silent. I couldn't. I tapped her and I said, I'm carrying a $2,000 purse. Do you think I want something from your purse? I have a $6,000 Rolex on. Do you think I'm going to steal your watch? What about me makes you want to move your things to the other side? No answer. No answer. But what it did to me and how long it took for me to get over that and to get back into my glory of enjoying the day was hours as a result. The things that are done by you, white privilege, consciously, subconsciously, think about it. Think about what you're doing and how you do it. Say the same exact thing at Whole Foods. Going into Whole Foods is a whole other experience. You know, a woman with her shopping cart. I couldn't reach for some carrots, and she has her purse in the shopping cart. She grabs it and puts it on her shoulder and clutches it. This is what we need to be aware of. And before I came to this awakening of what was going on around me, because it wasn't always clear, it wasn't always really clear. As a youngster, you go into it, you start seeing it. You start seeing it all over and responding. And before I would put a voice to it, I would look around and say, don't reach for that because she's got a purse. She'll think you're trying to go for this. Don't stand too close to this person. She'll think you're going into her pocket. Me, this woman, this proud Black woman who was raised by her father mostly and her mother, having to get and live in a world where I have to be cautious and watch my steps and raise my children to be careful. I want to leave you, not with long stories, but to raise your awareness. Raise your awareness to help others, to see people of color. We're not invisible. We're not invisible. We don't just exist. We're part of your lives. And let us live our lives. Wow. Thank you so much.
Next week, we're going to be looking at some scripture that's been pulled out by Reverend Barbie, and here he's going to help us walk through a number of very tough and challenging questions that she posed for the scripture, as you would guess she would, yes. So, okay, well, we've got a church to go to.
Great.